And you're very welcome to the last 5 days of the Western financial system, folks. It's a special week here on breakfornews.com with Fintan Dunn reporting now on the 28th of March 2022 as we count down Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday night. Well, Friday anyway. Being as we are in the last 5 days of the Western financial system, we'll be paying close attention to that, and possibly you may need to know some of the stuff that's about to go on. It arises out of, the overall situation between the West and Russia, China, etc. I'll just give you a sort of an overall summary of that. That's the West on the left there, and that's Russia, China there, and much of the non-aligned world on the right. And as you see, it's going pretty well for the West. I think, okay, there's a little bit of a flesh wound there. I think I see a little bit of a flesh wound, but that's a very good kick. I thought that was a very good kick. And we're possibly heading sort of long-term for this inevitable situation, I'm afraid, folks, by the end of this week. You possibly think that I'm joking. It's got to do with what, you remember Vladimir Putin said he wanted payment in rubles? Well, now, if you would like to send me money through wise.com, fintan@fintandunn.com is the email address. I'm still accepting euros and dollars. I'm still accepting euros and dollars. Folks, if you have this kind of stuff, look, I am still accepting that digitally at wise.com, fintan@fintandunn.com. Until the end of the week. I can't say anything beyond the end of the week. But having said that, if you do have this, can you hear the crispiness of that? That is a very good condition one. I found it today. And if you have really good condition ones like that, they could be worth serious money, in 10, 20 years or whatever. Collector's items, really. Like those Weimar notes and stuff. Exactly. Now you've got it. Yeah. Because it's just possible we may be getting a slight economic shift here as a result of this situation. And let me just give you the sort of good news here. I'll give it to you in English here, because the original is in Russian. More than 2,500 gold bars were bought by Kazakhstanis in February. Who knew? That's absolutely terrific. 2.9 tons in total have been exchanged by the central bank in a redemption and sale program, which has been ongoing for the last few years. And a very interesting comment by the National Bank of the Republic of Kazakhstan, who I'm sure you don't follow religiously, but it's worth just paying attention to it now in the current context. The advice from the central bank is, in the conditions of uncertainty in the financial market and increased volatility in exchange rates, investing in gold bars can serve as an alternative tool to ensure the safety of savings. And that's pretty damn good advice there from the National Bank of Kazakhstan, I think. A sort of thing I'd pay attention to if I was you as this week played out and as we move into the last 5 days of the Western financial empire. Let me explain how that's about to happen. Because Vladimir Putin said that thing about rubles, and because we're potentially moving to a world where oil and this thing are going to matter, and where it doesn't really matter so much about these things anymore, and sanctions and all that whole thing. Because over the last 10 years, we've moved from a world where the dollar was 60% of global settlements, and then the sanctioning stuff started, and a lot of people saw the writing on the wall, and by now the dollar is down to 47% of global settlements, a minority of global settlements. And based on what's about to happen Friday, that's going to fall further. We're in very, very interesting times, folks. We'll just go back to understand this, and I'll show you what's about to happen. We'll cut straight to the chase. I'll show you what's about to happen. February the 4th, 2022. China and Russia partner up against the West at Olympic Summit, and it isn't just China, Russia. But back then there was a meeting between Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin, and they said that the two nations' relationship was superior to any Cold War era alliance, and they'd work together on space, climate change, artificial intelligence, and control of the internet, and everything else as well. let's move quickly along. We'll backtrack now and we'll go back to 2014. Back in 2014, a guy called Sergei Glazyev, an advisor of the Russian president on Eurasian integration, was saying that it was necessary to improve investment integration in the customs union states. Customs union is Kazakhstan, Russia and Belarus, and trade had grown by 40%, and he was saying it's time to shift up a gear. Around the same time as he was saying that, the S was hitting the fan in Kiev as neoliberal anarchy was unleashed on the streets of Kiev in a staged revolution. So even as that was beginning, the seeds of this Ukrainian thing were happening 8 years ago. This is what a key advisor to the Russian president was saying about the need to speed up integration in customs union states. That's a fairly limited range of states, but that was about to extend extensively, as you will see. Let's just take a look at now the 15th of March 2022, and details coming out of something absolutely extraordinary. The Eurasian Economic Union and China will develop a draft of an independent international monetary and financial system. An independent one. Independent of what? Independent of the West. Bye-bye. It's coming, and it's coming imminently. This stuff has been expected, and these people have been preparing, and here we go. Now, this was on the 15th of March, right? So this will be based on national currencies of the member countries and the prices of exchange-traded commodities. In other words, they're going to have a basket of currencies based around and strengthened in the same way as one strengthens a currency with gold backing. They're strengthening their currencies with oil backing, or uranium backing, or cobalt backing, or rare earth metal backing, or whatever you want to back it with. That's a hard physical asset, stuff that people need. That's what makes the currency valuable, not leverage. We are in a mountain of leverage, and that mountain of leverage is about to be abandoned, folks, in favor of a system based on hard asset. A system based on hard asset. And they said in the last few days now, this is just a week ago, given the common challenges and risks associated with the global economic slowdown and restrictive measures against Eurasian and Chinese states, our countries should step up practical cooperation at the level of expert dialogues and joint measures and projects. Full steam ahead, said Sergei Glazyev, minister in charge of integration and macroeconomics of the Eurasian Economic Commission. Been a busy boy, has old Sergei. And they are rolling out like the equivalent of a European Union. They are rolling out a borderless, well, you see, borderless with people free to move for employment, free to generate claims as a result of accumulating social insurance contributions in one country and then use those in another, the ability to qualify for education in one country and then automatically be able to take jobs in another country. Full integration, much more, I think, than we're seeing currently in the European Union, which has signed up to these things but not actually delivered. Let's just keep going on and just reflect back to something that the same Sergei Glazyev wrote back on February the 25th in Sanctions and Sovereignty. He says the permanent intimidation of Russia with new infernal sanctions has long ceased to excite Russian public opinion. I remember how in 2014 I, along with other first persons subject to US sanctions, were interviewed, and we all assured journalists that we were proud of such recognition of our services to Russia. Defence and energy companies have learned how to circumvent these sanctions by abandoning the use of the dollar at the same time of American banks in favour of national currencies and banks of partner countries. The next step is the development of digital currency instruments that can be used without resorting to the services of banks that are afraid of being sanctioned. Digital currency instruments that can be used without resorting to the services of banks. Was that the sound of Western banking stocks? Boom, boing. That's bypassing all sanctions. That is cryptocurrency, digital exchange. Will you see? Anyway, he goes on to complain with the help of sanctions, the United States is trying to oust Russian goods from the markets of its satellites and replace them with its own. And then he reminds everyone that for 8 years after the introduction of sanctions, the share of dollar in international settlements has decreased 13.5% in only 8 years. That's unbelievable. The fall has been incredible, from 60% of global settlements in 2014, when Maidan happened, to 46.7% in 2020. Where are we at now, and where will we be at when the rest of the disengagement from the Western financial system has rolled out in, say, 2 years' time? What percentage will dollar settlement be at then? So this is a transfer of the ability to do business independent of the Western system. This is a transfer of that power outside of the Western system. Sanction? Who cares? We've got our own system. It doesn't even need banks to transfer money between countries. Thank you. Bye. So, as you can see there, for example, there's Russia-China trade versus US dollar use. And Russia-China trade up, US dollar use down. So here's where it gets interesting. The whole issue of SDRs, special deposit reserves, and the IMF. I'm picking up that this is the end of the Western IMF central banking system. It's not going to, there is never going to be a one world government, global, no, out of this. That's it. It's fractured at least into two, with probably an independent sector in the middle, but it's definitely fractured. And the West no longer has the majority of the world's population, like from Friday onwards, within its ambit. Move to an independent system, and that's going to be a decentralized system. Isn't that cute? And the cost base of it is going to be virtually nil transactionally, because it's going to be crypto based, and they'll be able to move funds around. I know everybody has got concerns about the use of digital currencies within domestic populations and how that can be exploited, and the implications for freedom and liberty to spend your money wherever you want. We'll cover that. That's not necessarily the same as digital currency systems used by central banks to exchange with each other and to manage their trade and other financial needs, independent of the use of any banking structure. Now, this is end of the monopolies. This is disintermediation. And it doesn't please everybody. There's an article, March the 11th, even as this is all playing out, and you're reading about the creation of this new, well, they've been working towards it, economic union. Here's George Soros on March 11th complaining of the close partnership announced between the two countries, and how surprised he was that Xi appeared to have given Putin carte blanche to invade and wage war against Ukraine. Yeah, it's very upsetting for George Soros. Very upsetting for the entire Western apparatus, in fact. This is. And even old Larry Fink of BlackRock is on board with the new realities here on Russia Today, reporting that the Ukraine crisis marks the end of globalization. Indeed, it's not as if like that's something that Larry Fink is celebrating. But everything is an opportunity to do business, folks. And so these people want to pitch to get in on the action. These people want in on whatever is emerging. And that's what this whole Klaus Schwab, there will be a great reset, new world. This is everybody attempting to shape and be part of and define and control and guide and appear to be knowing where they're going and what they're doing in relation to the inevitable realities we've been heading towards for the last 8 years. So while the events of the COVID and the and then moving on to events in Ukraine, while all of that has been very surprising to most people, for those paying attention to the underlying fundamentals and the crisis of the Western banking system, it's been predictable that we've been heading towards showdown time, because 2007, 2008 was a signature moment, and the rest of the world's gotten tired of a printing press in the United States being used to actually create an army that then dominates the rest of the world. So the world pays through the dollar seigniorage system. In other words, the ability to print dollars at virtually no cost in the United States. It pays for its own oppression and has paid. But you see that that dollar spigot has been turned down by the rest of the world, and we're heading in the last 4 or 5 days to the killer blows that are coming. This, in terms of its impact on you, is going to be more of an impact than the Ukraine war, what's coming. So we'll just go on with some more. Switch. A financial revolution is coming that threatens to change everything, and not for the better, by Nick Corbishley on Naked Capitalism on the 25th of March. Around 90 central banks are either in the process of experimenting with or already piloting central bank digital currencies. In a world of just over 190 countries, that's a large contingent, but given that they include the European Central Bank and the G20 economies, they represent more than 90% of global GDP. Also firmly on board is the world's largest asset manager, BlackRock, which helps many of the world's largest central banks to manage their assets. A global digital payment system, thoughtfully designed, can enhance the settlement of international transactions while reducing the risk of money laundering and corruption. Digital currencies can also help bring down the cost of cross-border payments, for example, when expatriate workers send earnings back to their families. Yes, indeed. So you're talking about a super low cost, non-banking based. There's a total revolution in the structure and the cost base involved in all of this. We'll just take some more. Yeah, I think this puts it most starkly and clearly. Russia and China to launch new international currency. Yep. They're seeding off something which is potentially far larger. And we're talking about by 1st of April. This kicks in at the end of this week. So here is the people who are interested in perhaps a new currency which is independent of the dollar. An international currency. It would be, for example, the Eurasian Economic Union. That's Russia, Kazakhstan, Belarus, you see there. It might indeed include the bulk of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which, crosses again, the same countries cross over and may be involved in some or more of these institutions. But SCO is also interested in some kind of a currency that would be independent. The member states also in the ASEAN nations, Southeast Asian nations, they're also interested in something like that. They might join up in something like that too. And we also have, of course, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, which is, China, Vietnam, Philippines, Indonesia, Singapore, Australia, and New Zealand are in that. Don't know how that will play out. But that's the scope and scale. Plus, we can take a reasonable estimate of the number of people around the world who have, backed Russia, and sort of add them in. So when you view all that in the context of the Belt and Road Initiative, China's Belt and Road Initiative, and you're looking at a at a map of the networks of that Belt and Road Initiative and how they will stretch from the west here and all the way out to from Eastern Europe to Western Europe. Do you really think that long term that oil is not going to start flowing again from Russia into Germany? Do you really think long term that those commercial trade routes, those vital trade routes which offer prosperity to the entire Asian continent, are not going to be opened up? Of course they are. So I'm not sure how long this stalemate will last. We are in very delicate times, and the potential for something very significant in the financial system right now is high and getting higher by the day because of these dynamics that we're looking at here. And I think we all need to be very careful about the potential fallout. Back in 1987, when I was helping manage other people's money, I famously exited the market on the Friday before the Black Monday crash, having rode the bull all the way to the last day. So I'm not squeamish or skittish, but I have that kind of feeling again right now about how things are. The long-term implications of these shifts, and when I say long-term, I mean from next Monday onwards, implications of these shifts are obviously highly inflationary. But the shifts and moves in the capital markets and the realization of what's actually happening broadly, and the shift from paper to hard assets, that could generate some momentum that could be a tsunami. And the anticipation of that, or the realization of that, may strike home at any moment. So we'll see what happens. I'll be back during the course of the week with more analysis of what's actually going on here, the implications for its strategies, what we do, and the bigger picture, and cover that as we head towards the establishment of a new international currency, and not unexpected, but indeed a long planned for consequence of standing up against the West. This isn't taking place without having a very well thought out strategy to ensure the financial triumph, indeed, of the non-Western world in this showdown, which is revolving around Ukraine. Okay, be back with more on that too, and on Ukraine developments as they occur. We'll go out with the song Hail Caesar. We're talking about Putin potentially being a reincarnation of Caesar in the last episode. Check that out in the video archive if you haven't already. But this is Hail Caesar from 9 years ago from Joe Dunn. It's not off the new album, which is on josephdunn.com, and it's pretty good. It's very good, in fact. Crafted over perhaps even as long as 9 years, I think it was. But this track, Hail Caesar, is not. I'll be back with more, and I hope you'll join me for that during the course of this week. But in the meantime, for breakfornews.com, this has been Fintan Dunn reporting.
These days, they're telling us twisted lies. These ways, the leaders are a great big monopoly. And they're rolling up the dice now, rolling across the world. Rolling up the dice now, rolling across the world. Rolling across the world. These days are running fast, so fast you can't believe. These ways a country falls and lies there left to bleed. Ah yeah, they're rolling up the dice, rolling across the world. Rolling up the dice now, rolling across the world. Rolling across the world. Rolling across the world. These days the race is on to save old Mama Earth. These days it's plain to see they're running in the dark. They're rolling up the dice, rolling across the world. We're rolling up the dice now. Rolling across the world. We're rolling across the world. We're rolling across the world. Mm-ah. 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 These days I wonder why I never can be free. These ways, they said to me, are just like misery.